Welcome to Events Demystified Podcast, where we explore and demystify the world of in-person, virtual, hybrid event AV production and technology by sharing insightful tips, tricks and tactics to make your events a success. This podcast is brought to you by Trifan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency. And your host is Anca Trifan, a technical event planner and producer with almost 2 decades of hands-on technical experience in event production.
Well, hello. Welcome back to Event About It podcast series, where we dive into some of the toughest and the funnest and the most challenging event stories shared by our amazing community. I'm your host, Anca Platon Trifan, and as always, super grateful to have with me Megan, my wonderful co-host. I keep going this way because my image is mirrored. Hi, Megan.
Hello, glad to be here, ready for another fun episode.
So exciting. And we have a special guest with us today. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to take a moment to look back at some of the amazing stories that we've covered so far. And we've handled some stories. And the story goes, Megan, you are somewhere this last week and you were so prepared because of some of the stories that we have shared, and we realized how eye-opening some of those moments are. I can't wait to hear more about that.
Like, the whole purpose of this podcast series came full circle for me this week. If you guys remember John Moritz episode, he shared with us what he had to produce an event with no power for like 4 or 5 days or something crazy. So I was actually on show site recently and the power went out in the middle of our talk. Thankfully, they were wrapping up a session, so like it didn't impact the general session too badly.
And here comes Megan with the flashlight.
It was almost over, but like as soon as it went out, I was like, don't worry, everyone. I got this. I know exactly what to do. And thankfully, we were in a place that had a lot of natural light. There was a lot of windows in all the rooms, and the power came back on within a couple of hours. I think it was like 2 or 3 hours we were out. So it was not the catastrophe that John had, but had it been, I was fully prepared. I knew exactly what to do. We had the flashlights ready. We were like fully on board, ready to go.
I mean, that's exactly the reason why we take the time to share some of those stories, because each story has a little bit of wisdom nugget or learning or something new that, it just goes to say that there's a lot of things happening with events and you got to be prepared, but sometimes you don't know what to be prepared for. So listening to some of those stories gives a bit of more perspective to what you might be running into. I'm not saying that you have to constantly be on the edge. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? But be prepared like Megan was. And kudos to you for really navigating that so well. That's awesome.
Yeah, we had no hiccups. We just rolled right through it. We knew what to communicate, how to communicate it. It was, and all thanks to this podcast and John Moritz episode talking about it, because that immediately came to my brain and thinking about all the stuff we talked about and where to navigate attendees, what we tell them, what we say, and thankfully it ended up not being, really impactful at all. But had it been, I felt confident going into it. So it was a great moment.
I love it. I mean, just if you think about the fact that you weren't stressed about it, that in itself, it's a huge weight off your chest, So today I'm super excited because we are welcoming, as I kind of sort of like lean into earlier, a very special guest to our conversation, and he's got stories for decades. That is Chris Musgrave. He is the director of Live Production Summit and Chief Innovation Officer at OSA International. With his extensive background in event production, Chris's unwavering commitment to innovation and teamwork has been instrumental in elevating events to new heights. His visionary leadership has fostered a culture of creativity and technological advancement, making every event not only memorable but also highly impactful. Beyond his role at OSA International, Chris's passion extends to his involvement with the Live Production Summit, where he fosters collaboration and knowledge sharing among industry professionals. I am still to join one of those, and I really hope that next year is the year. career. And his ability to balance creativity with budget constraints while ensuring a seamless experience for all involved is truly inspiring. And with that, without any further ado, let's welcome Chris to the show. Chris, we're so happy to have you here. How are you?
I am stellar. Now I know what my profile says.
We were just talking about it. I'm like, Chris, you didn't send me a bio. I just went on LinkedIn. You better be happy with what you have on there. And he's like, I have not read my profile in forever. I'm like, well, you probably are not the only one.
No, well, I've been in this position for a minute, so it still holds true. But thank you for having me.
I'm super excited that you were able to join us. I know last time we had you were part of our live episode and you were in the chat, and man, were you busy with stories.
Immediately when you started chatting some of your stories, I was like, we got to get Chris on the show. He was too good. You got to tell us more. We wanted to hear more from you.
Like anything else, if you do it long enough, the stories compile. And live events is made up of just an interesting set of characters, if you will, with a whole lot of personalities and scenarios that happen. It's one of those industries, if it was easy, everybody would do it, but it's really not meant for everybody. It simply is.
I also, though, love the fact that you have a wide range of experience in live event production, and you've traveled a lot, you've toured a lot, you've done corporate, you've done everything, I think, from one event to the next. I don't know how much you've done weddings, but I feel like if you've also done that, then you can check everything off the list. And I would love to hear some of those stories from you.
I've consulted weddings, but I haven't done that. Because I explain to people that years ago, there used to be a lot of silos between municipal events, executive events, touring, and what have you. And those silos are gone now. We all use the same vendors, the same technology. We're using the same crew companies or what have you. And some of these weddings are, $10 million plus affairs that have massive production. So when I hear people say, oh, I won't go do that, I was like, it's that old rule. Take every conversation, because you never know what's going to come out of it. If you have the time, have the meeting, because you don't know. If you just say no out of the gate without all the facts, you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
100%. It is true. I mean, I was in LA and working for a production company down there, and we did some multi-million-dollar weddings that were multiple days, and every single day was one event in itself, and it had so many production elements. The reason why I needed several production companies to just do that wedding is because it was over the top. And you're right, like those are the weddings I would definitely work for. Do I want to work for the wedding that just wants to pay me $500 to just hold this sound system somewhere in the middle of nowhere? No, I'm good.
No. It would have to be pretty elaborate, to be honest, for me to get involved, with a decent level of production. But I also, I do wear the two hats, as you mentioned before, both at OSA and Live Production Summit. So it's, the bandwidth is also there, but we've got an incredible team at OSA that basically can handle everything with all of our departments and all of the gear that we house. I don't think there's any event that would really be a problem for us.
I love it. Well, before we dive into today's stories, I would want to kick off things with just a fun question. So that applies to all three of us. And that is, what is the most unusual and maybe unexpected request that you've received either from a client or a speaker or maybe a vendor? And how did you handle it?
The most unusual request.
I have one that comes to mind.
I was sure that you might, Megan, while Chris is thinking about it.
Yeah. It's kind of like when food allergy requests go to an extreme. So this was a conference I did many years ago. I think it was in New York City, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, this one specific attendee had a laundry list of allergies, like 30 plus things that he was allergic to. And he sent us a note, and of course we always want to accommodate it, but the list was so extensive of all the things that he was allergic to. I had to reply back and just say, like, what can you actually eat?
Yeah, like give that list to us, maybe.
Right, like I don't actually know what to prepare for you because there were things like onions and garlic and bean sprouts and like all these things. I was just like, I honest to God don't know how to accommodate you. And he was like, well, just can you put it in front of chef? And I was like, no, I cannot put this in front of the chef. And I'm not like at this, I think it was like a few 100-person conference. And I was like, I can't make one special meal just for you every single day unless you give me some direction. Like the chef is not going to know what to do with this either. And the response literally came back with, oh, well, I always prefer it to go in front of chef because they have ideas on what maybe I can cook for myself at home. And I
So
was
he
like,
was
this is not a
leveraging
cooking
that.
class. Like he literally was like leveraging this conference to get his food allergies in front of a chef so that the chef could make him a special meal every single day so that he would have ideas about what to cook at home. And I'm just like,
Well,
you know what? I don't know. It went too far for me.
in the age of AI, I can totally see taking that to ChatGPT and then asking it to act as this master chef. And I give you some ideas. What are you gonna do? But back then, as you mentioned, it's like, just tell me, can you eat like just a simple piece of chicken? Does that will that suffice?
And at that point, like if you have that many food allergies and sensitivities, like maybe you should just bring your own meal at that
Yeah,
point,
because I mean
like
contamination, right?
exactly. And I'm always wanting to accommodate everyone, but this is like when it went way to the far. And again, happy to accommodate him. That's why I asked the question of like, what can you eat? But then when the response was like, oh, I was really hoping chef would come up with something. I was just like, come on, man, give me a break. I got like 299 other people to deal with.
Yeah. Oh.
Wow, not to sound derogatory, but I'd have to question if somebody actually has that many allergies. Are they just that picky? I know so many people through the I know so many people through the years that create riders just because somebody else had a rider, so they had to have a rider. They didn't really want any of it. You know what I mean? They just felt that they should be entitled to something since somebody else gets something. I've seen that to be the detriment of artists, as a matter of fact. And I've been sitting here listening.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Chris, I'm sure you have some stories where somebody was like, I do not want the yellow M&Ms and the brown M&Ms in my, green room.
Well, those were done for a different reason. Those were done because, again, in touring, at least a lot of times, you show up and you could tell by your rider how closely, or the questions they ask during advancing, how much they're paying attention. So a lot of those things were put in to make sure they're paying attention. Like, there must be 5 non-child-proof Bic lighters and they must be orange. Now, if I walk in and I see those 5 lighters, I know they read it and they're serious about following it to the detail. Or at least if they email me going, really, what's with the lighters?
Do you know
really
what I mean? Need that?
Cool.
Right.
All right. Yeah, right. So a lot of those are put in as flags just to see how it goes. You know what I mean? But sitting here trying to remember the strangest request, I mean, there's been a lot over the years, and I don't know that I could single them out or have the eidetic memory of exactly what they were. I mean, but there was one that I don't even remember all of it, but it was pretty odd. It was a smoked salmon, rubber sheets, any fireworks that we could find, and an 8-ball of blow. So
random.
That's amazing.
But the worst part is, so collectively, like back in the day, you'd have a sheet where the tour would just write what they want. So you don't know who's requesting which or why, but there's the artist list. You know what I mean? And a lot of it will also give you a great sense of the difference of personalities that are involved in a production as well. I know some artists that don't talk to each other. They toured for 30 years, don't like each other, don't talk to each other, but they know without each other, no other band they go into is going to become or do anything. So they kind of still need each other. That's not as uncommon as people think.
This almost sounds like when I'm like mad at my husband, I'm like, I love you, but it doesn't mean that I like you right now.
Come here. No, get away. It's,
Pretty much.
riders are always an interesting thing, and requests are even, everybody. It's the old saying is you never say no to a client. You say, let me look into it. So regardless how outlandish the request is, you do the due diligence, you create the feasibility report with, of course, the costs involved. And if they say no, it's them saying no to it. You didn't say no to the client. They decided no. So it's always just provide, regardless what the cost is, you got to do the due diligence, unless it's just something so outrageous that you're like, look, I'm not going to spend my bandwidth, because unless you have $10 million that you say you have right now, there's no point talking about this, whatever the number is. But, you generally just never say no. And that's when the requests just get a little like, all right, here we go. And of course, everybody has high hopes of whatever level of production they're doing, of what they think they want until they get the bill.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it's a great segue into our first story. And because you have stories for day, Chris, I would love to hear some of those. And it doesn't have to be related to what we just talked about. That was just the icebreaker, okay? But I would love some stories from touring. We were just talking pre-recording, and we were like going over some of the stories that we've had. And I'm like, we haven't had really a lot of stories from the touring world. And you've been around for quite a bit, and I'm sure you have stories from corporate events as well as from any other type of event out there. But I love to maybe get us started with something that we haven't necessarily touched on, and that would be touring. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, you got to throw me some sort of which street do you want to go down kind of.
We love a provocative story.
Do we have a street?
Okay, I'll start with I was in Sydney, Australia. I was at an Asian restaurant with some clients and a group that I was touring with, and I was up trying to pay the bill with the credit card when I heard some splashing and giggling behind me, and then realized that the woman in front of me had this absolutely mortified look on her face. And it turns out that two of the guys had grabbed 2 squid out of the tank, put them on their head, and ran out. And I'm holding the credit card saying, okay, and 2 squid, please? I don't know, charge me, whatever. And then we heard a big commotion outside. And as we go outside, they're trying to see how far up on the office windows in downtown Sydney they can get these squid to stick.
Oh my gosh. Who are your friends, please?
Well, this same artist has provided a lot of stories. So we finally get out of Sydney and we get to Melbourne, and we're walking across a road, and we're jaywalking across into a venue, and this car pulls up. And you know the way you've seen it happen before, somebody walk across the street, somebody edges the car to kind of mess with them a little bit. Well, one of our guys jumps on the hood of this car and throws a fit. And the 4 guys get out of the car, and it turns out that the 4 guys turn out to be undercover police officers that are our security for the night at the venue.
They're like, we are going to not engage in this event.
Yeah, they quit immediately. They're like, forget it. We're out.
We're out.
The best part is they try to rouse one of our guys, and he didn't realize that he had dropped his passport in the van, and I'm holding it because I found it on the floor. I'm purposely holding it because I want to let him panic and freak out thinking he lost his passport, because he's guy, you know what I mean? And I'll just hold on to it for now, and it's safer for me to hold it anyways. We get out of Melbourne, we get to Perth. Same 2 gentlemen again getting an argument. And they, one of them throws a beer bottle at the other, hits him in the head, shatters the window above the pool. While I'm downstairs negotiating with the hotel to drain the pool, of course, because they're going to charge me to drain the pool to get the glass out and everything else, a moped comes flying off the balcony over the registration office and lands in the front courtyard of the hotel. And it bends this kind of gate. And I guess we're adding a gate. I just, at a certain point as a tour manager, production manager, you don't become numb, but you're like, look, but you explain to the artist, look, this is your money. I can't tell you how to spend or waste your money. That's completely your call. And it's not my fault if you do so. I can advise you, but if you don't want to listen, you don't want to listen. And that was all just one act. I mean, that same act, we were escorted out of New Zealand. One of them was actually detained in New Zealand. Yeah. So it's.
At what point do you quit, Chris? At one point do you quit from this position of babysitting artist?
I've seen your show before, so I won't feel bad saying this. So oftentimes tour managers and production managers will include what we call an asshole fee. And it's a exaggerated amount on top of our normal requirement because we know we're going to deal with a personality or more. I've had tours where I had 3 asshole fees stacked on top of my normal fee. And then I've gone to walk out of, and management has chased me saying, no, we'll give you another asshole fee. You know, I've had support acts with major acts. And I asked the major act, why do you keep them around? And the major act says, I just want to see what he's going to do next.
Oh
You know,
my
it's like
gosh.
sometimes they'll keep people around for comedic value.
Entertainment.
You know? Yeah.
I mean, that's not a bad reason.
So well, but not for them because they obviously don't have to deal with the ins and outs of it, right? You know, so they're not living with the personality. I mean, I've had the trailer park boys on my bus as an added attraction on top of who I was already tour managing. And when you wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning to Bubbles from Trailer Park and he's in full character, it can be a bit, fatiguing. I love those guys, but I mean, it can be a bit fatiguing, right?
Especially if I need my sleep, because I just know that I've been up the whole night putting fire somewhere else. Who knows what they were doing, up until 6 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. Well,
so Chris,
that's the worst thing.
Walk us through,
Go
like,
ahead.
okay, so you're talking about being tour manager. So you obviously have seen that. What does that entail, and how is that role different than maybe, like, why are you negotiating with draining the pool because there's glass in it versus like the assistant of the artist that you're working with? So
Right.
maybe walk our audience through the difference in your role.
This is different by levels of artists, if you will. So some artists will have not just a tour manager, they'll also have a road manager, two totally different things. And they'll also have a production manager. A tour manager can have his assistant and a production manager can have an assistant. So now you're just down to the semantics of size of the tour. But and that's what's different nowadays. When I came up, you kind of had to learn at minimum very strong fundamentals of all departments involved. Otherwise, how can you say that you're managing them if you don't even understand? So the kind of rule is that if you have strong fundamentals in the terminology and understanding of these departments, then nobody can lie to you about how much it costs. Nobody can lie to you about how long it's going to take. And you can also pitch in and help if needed and show that you're not just a vocal leader that, look, I do this, we can do this. So it's a difference of level of tour. And a lot of times in international tours, acts will try to scale it back as much as they can because, of course, they're in it to make a profit and each person is a line item. At the end of the day, I mean, we're all just line items for somebody at the end of the day, but it's you try to curtail it back. So, even it doesn't matter the level, you're going to try and break it back. Now, generally as the tour manager, I'm ultimately responsible for the tour at that point. I answer to the artist and management. I usually like to say I answer to the artist because even the manager works for the artist. But you work as a team, obviously, but I'm the boots on the ground. So I'm the one that's going to have to be the one to submit a report to management and artist. This is what happened. This is what it cost. This is why it cost that. And also try to negotiate on behalf of the artist to make sure whatever that impact is as less painful as possible, you know what I mean? Because otherwise somebody's just going to take advantage, right? Which is pretty common these days. A lot of people have a big misconception about the amount of money and how it gets spread around amongst tours. It's that old adage, if you took $1 and you took an artist and you took a show, well, 10% minimum is going to booking agent, 10 to 15 is going to management. So there's a quarter of it gone right there. Another 5 to 10% is going to a business manager. That's 35 cents out of the dollar gone. Add taxes, that's another 20 cents. Now we're 55 cents. And then you've got 4 people in a band, 5 people in a band to split up that remaining 55 cents. And this is before you pay production, salaries, or anything else. That's just the hard-baked costs of management and business manager and everything else. You still have to add in production, transportation, all those costs. And then whatever's left is being split amongst 4 or 5, whatever, amount of artists there are. So, the one percenters, as we call them, the Taylor Swifts, the Dave Grohls, the Foo Fighters, whatever, those are 1%er acts. Or, there's not as many of those as people think. I usually tell people, can you name a dozen 1%er acts? Probably not. So when you look at the blue collar, Yeah, if you look at the blue collar artists, the ones that are out there grinding out, 100 shows a year or what have you, those are the ones where you really got to watch it because it is their livelihood. And it's everybody's livelihood. So but the money is 35 to 50 cents out of the dollar is gone before you even look at the dollar.
Wow. So like if you have that type of personality where you're literally wasting money because you're being stupid,
Yeah.
like what's left?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's not much in left, right?
Well, so I've seen bands break up over it. I've seen physical altercations come of it. Way back in the day when cell phones first came out, and the lead singer's in the back of the bus talking to whatever girl he met that night for 45 minutes or more, not realizing that it's 50 cents a minute, and at the end of the tour, all of a sudden you've got thousands and thousands of cell phone bills because they didn't want to listen to you. You know what I mean? It's, the other band members get a little upset. So there does become infighting, and you do run into scenarios where each band member may ask for a running accounting series through the tour where they stand and they want to watch each other. There's a tour out there right now that just caused a huge lawsuit amongst Journey members, that one of them has spent like $1 million on jets and food and this and that and blah blah blah, but the rest of them didn't really approve that. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So yeah, so it's, now it's public record that this fight is going on, but it just goes to show that this is what happens. It happened with the Allman Brothers back in the day. One of them gets a limo, the other one has to have a limo. This one's getting that, oh, this one has to have that. This, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden you're outdoing each other financially, and you come home and go, okay, well, what, they get caught up in the moment. But at the same, I explain to everybody else as well, though, you have to be a little touched to be a pop star, a rock star, or what have you. Again, it goes back to, if it was easy, everybody would do it. So once you understand that these people, they do have a specialness to them, that creativity, and they are a little out of left field, you know what I mean? But that's what makes them them. But you have to accept that. You can't change that. That's what makes them what they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
However, the more they're coddled and the more that balloon is created around them, the more eccentric they can easily become.
Do you feel like age also has something to do with it? Like, for example, a young artist that's kind of been raised in the industry in that way of being one way or another, and has not had the opportunity to mature in the real world, they would be more eccentric than someone like, there's some really young artists that have came to fame way too early before they had an opportunity to like become like adults. And that, do you feel like that have an impact on how this whole thing can end up for them?
Absolutely. I mean, we call it's situational conditioning, right? You're conditioned by your environment. So the longer you're in that, the longer it becomes your normal, so to speak. You know what I mean? And so we watched it with Michael Jackson, was a great example of that. Michael, his whole life, knew nothing but being Michael Jackson and being in that bubble. And so you look at Axl Rose, was the same thing. Oh, he's a shut-in, if you will, or what have you. And really, the fact of it is fame can be a double-edged sword for some of them. And what ends up happening, we hear about them going, oh, he's on some exclusive island somewhere, whatever else. It's like, well, that's the only place they can go and not be mobbed. They can't just walk into a restaurant. They can't just go to a gas station. And it's the byproduct of that level of fame means there's very few places you can be comfortable, be yourself, just be out in public. So they kind of become introverts, not by choice, but by pure safety and or some level of solitude that they seek. So all of a sudden you find out, you see these pictures of these mega stars hanging out together. Well, it's kind of all they can hang out with, right? Where, they can't go down to the pub and just say, hey, I'm going to go watch the game with everybody, because that's not going to work out depending on the level of star. So it does create and manifest, if you will, as situational conditioning. Some of them really, I mean, some of them actually do use disguises or whatever just to kind of go out in public, you know what I mean, and try to feel normal, and they seek some level of normalcy because they miss it. Some are just that way. Dave Grohl, great example. Dave Grohl will just go anywhere with anybody and hang out, and he's just Dave Grohl. I mean, he's an enigma in the sense that he went from one massive band as a drummer to another even bigger band now as a frontman and a guitarist, but he's just Dave. You know, Dave's happy to just talk, chat, hang out, very jocular in his personality, you know, but a lot of them, they can't do that. You know, imagine Taylor Swift just walking into a Safeway. You know, I mean, it's not going to work.
Like, what's
However, there's
Safeway?
Right,
well,
which one? We want to know.
You see what I'm saying? So they can't do it. And that it's another part where younger tour managers now that don't have the fundamentals of all the departments or whatever else, and maybe also don't understand that it's a huge part of the understanding of artists and even really high level CEOs. Yeah, there is a reason why they fly private. You know, there's a safety concerns. You know, unfortunately, we live in a world where we have to be conscious of what's reality, and safety and security and that stuff is a huge reality. So while some people shun, you know, these artists or whatever, oh, look at him on his private jet and this and that, or her or whatever, you know, oftentimes they don't really have a choice if they want to go somewhere, you know, otherwise it's not just their safety. You're talking about mob mentality and some sketchy people that live in the world, or a lot of sketchy people live in the world. So it could be safety for everybody else around them as well. And people need to be a little more cognizant of that rather than pointing fingers of look at their life, because let's be clear, us in a societal format, we created their life. We created those pressures. We created an environment where stars aren't safe and can't walk anywhere. You know what I mean? So I think society has a hard time of looking in the mirror.
I don't disagree with that. I'm curious how you have the hard conversations with your artists, like the example of the broke a beer bottle in the pool and now it has to get drained. And like, how do you break that cost to your artist? Or like, do you become a therapist kind of just like,
well, so
we
yeah,
used
to say that about tour managers, production managers being, look, we're marriage counselors, we're priests, we're doctors, we're nurses, we're friends, we're family, we're every accountants, we're everything all wrapped up in one to a point. But you know, my approach has always been that you don't have enough money for me to lie to you. And I'm not going to tell it to you in a snarky manner, or, you know, sometimes I'm not going to, you know, sit here and say I haven't lost my sense of humor a few times and had it out with a few artists. Absolutely, I have. And if you walk into touring, like one of the running jokes used to be, you walk into a room and say, who's been fired by Prince? And 90% of the room's going to go, I have. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, another running joke, if you've been in this long enough to say you haven't been fired, means you're haven't really been in it that deep or that longer, because it happens. But generally the best way to do it is buy the line items, buy the receipts, you know, and clearly there, and get everything in writing. I mean, I usually, if I got strange requests or requests that went against protocol, I would have an artist, look, you need to text that to me or email that to me, just so that when you come back to reality, I can go, yeah, well, look, it was purely your call, you know. And you walk a razor's edge, though, because if they are, let's say they're inebriated and make a judgment call that, you know, this isn't good, and you go against it to protect them or protect the production, the whole band, whatever else, you could get fired for doing the right thing.
That's tough.
You know, some of the egos are so far gone that it's like, I know it was good that you didn't do it, but you still didn't do what I wanted you to do, kind of thing. And it's like, all right, look, you know,
Right.
clearly this isn't gonna, you know, this is an untenable situation. But, you know, the best way to do it is just in a calm, decisive manner with facts. As long as you have the facts to back it up and you present the facts, then, you know, anything that comes past that is ego, unless you yourself made, you know, obviously a very grave mistake and, you know, have cause of why they need to release you. But if it's purely on them, and that band, you know, they knew it was on them. And but, you know, that band, without putting them on blast, that's why I won't say their name, their reputation, their entire history is antics like that. I mean, it's just, that's what they're known for. There's no secrets. There's no subterfuge. If you hire them, you know what you're getting, kind of thing. And, you know, that's always surprised me about certain promoters. It's like they hire certain acts and then bitch about how that acts. It's like, you knew what they were when you hired them, you know. But the other side of that coin is a lot of artists don't like to accept the fact that once you book a show, you've sold your show. It's kind of not your show to a point, because you've now sold it to a promoter. You know what I mean? So it's not like you can walk in, oh, well, we're not doing that time, we're going to start. It's like, man, you know, you agreed to this. There's a contract. You sold yourself. It's not so much yours, you know. So it's real important to keep that.
Like, what happens if you breach that contract? Like, they go after
You can,
you?
all right. I had an artist once who really, so with me as a tour
Yeah.
manager, I'll always say you're going to be bored, but you're not going to be late. And I covet what is my oh shit time. And my oh shit time is that if something goes wrong, I have a buffer of time to fix what that problem is. So my approach is always we get to the next city as soon as possible. We leave to this because if anything happens on the way, accident, this, that, what have you, we have time, to make up or deal with. And I had an artist that was very upset at my approach to this, and he wanted to hang out in the city one night and party with his friends. And I said, okay, put it in writing that you're changing the call and this is on you. And he did, and in a very snarky manner. And he didn't end up partying with his friends. He walked around the parking lot all night arguing with his wife on the phone. But we left late, and we blew an axle on the trailer in the middle of nowhere.
Oh,
we did not make the next show, and the artist had to forfeit the deposit, and the promoter sued him for all the marketing money spent on the show that he lost.
Wow.
So now not only does the band lose the income, they're paying. So to walk around that parking lot and argue with his wife cost that band about $75,000.
Could you have done it on the bus?
Sure, he could have, but that wouldn't have been, what he thought he was going to do, which is go party with his friends, right?
Right.
So
they can go after you.
I'm still friends with that artist.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
I'm still friends with that artist. I mean, he didn't look me in the eye for about 2 weeks after that, but because you couldn't have written a perfect kind of example of why I do what I do than that. Actually, in my career, it was like, all right, look, that just proved the point, that much more. Like, you'll get to an airport with me a minimum of 2 hours early, even for a domestic flight. And that's also because we always have more luggage than we're supposed to have, and it's easier to negotiate the luggage when you're first there. And if security's terrible, or again, if there's traffic, whatever else to mitigate, because if you miss the plane, the consequences of that contractor being in breach are very real. And now even more so. I mean, we live in a very litigious society, so everybody's looking for any reason. I mean, this is more prominent in the United States than anywhere else in the world, that people are quick to say, look, I'm going to sue you. That's just this country's kind of backbone almost. It's kind of ridiculous, that you live in a country where lawyers are on bus stops. Are you injured? Call me. It's insane. But it's a part of it all the time. People say, who's on speed dial? Your wife? No, my attorney. That's kind of the environment you put yourself in, but you need to do it.
We've talked a lot about
some of these artists. Look, the contingencies are very important. Yeah, contingencies are important, but the biggest contingency to me is time. It's the only commodity you can't buy, can't trade for, can't get back, and this goes for life as well. And it's the only commodity that can help you solve anything is time. So, the contingency to me, the biggest contingency is having as much of that oh shit time stored away, that you can to deal with whatever it is, depending on how big it is. I mean, I've been on a bus and watched our trailer pass us because it snapped off the bus and rolled right past us on a freeway in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? And then it's like, not only do you have to, find a tow truck, you got to find a welder, and we got to do this and we got to do that. And, none of that's going to happen in 20 minutes.
No.
So that it's about, holding time. You got to have your time. And some of these artists' idea.
Before we move any further, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our main sponsor, Trifan Events, which is a boutique event planning and production agency that will come alongside you, offering personalized event planning and technical support, strategic event design, production and technology management, and flawless execution for live, virtual, and hybrid events. The team at Trifan Events is passionate about planning and producing event experiences that get people involved with true moments of interaction, engagement, and co-creation, while offering white glove treatment throughout the entire planning process, enabling you to reach your event goals with the use of creativity, production tools, and event technology. To find out how Trifan Events can plan and produce your event become memorable, go to trifanevents.com.
for busy people, anyone that's on a schedule, any delay to this tight schedule that they run, not only will cost you way more than it's worth, but it's sometimes not feasible. And I remember like sometimes there was like, I was running many times my business so tight, and I would hear friends, share a story how they were going, I don't know, on a road trip and something happened and they were stuck in a motel room for 2 days, and thinking to myself, I would not be able to afford that. Like, how do you, like, what happens? Like, if you have to stay in the middle of nowhere, no internet, nothing for 2 days, and you're running things, it's like, I can't, like, my brain was like, I don't know what I would do.
Well, that's the other side that a lot of people also don't recognize or think about is the psychological effects of rushing. If you're constantly rushing your production, we got to go, we got to go, we got to go, we got to go. You know what I mean? There is a stress level that's creating, a vibe that it's creating that is unhealthy, unproductive, and can be very unsafe. You know what I mean? So if you're doing it with as much of that, oh shit time as you've got, where it's like, we've got plenty of time, load the luggage, we're going to get there. And it happens in that calm, decisive manner. A lot of people don't recognize it. They feel antsy because they're bored, or I don't want to go sit at the airport, but that's better than, oh no, shit, dude, get up, go, go, go. And they don't realize the toll it takes, so there's that whole psychological side you have to, and look, when I started, like anybody else, you don't learn from winning, right? You learn when you fuck up. That's when you truly learn.
But I feel like some of us are so conditioned to that fast pace of life that you're dangerous. Like, that's my modus operandi. You know what I mean?
It's a dangerous approach to run productions that way. If you show up at the last possible minute, if you have one problem with your load in, one technical issue arises, all of a sudden now you're late. And the later you get, now you're pushing against breach of contract. You could be affecting the rest of the show. What if you're an opening artist? The headliner's not going to give you more time. So now you're just shrinking your set list because you keep fucking up. Yeah. So you have to learn from that and realize that, the time aspect of having it isn't just to do it better and have more time to do it more professionally, but psychologically, it's also a much easier existence in an already kind of stressful world. I mean, the world of events is pressure, and I tell people all the time, like, I'm the director of Live Production Summit, and this conference is strictly for the world of events. And people go, well, how stressful is it? And I go, well, think about this. I'm putting on an event for all the best in the world of events. There's I get it all the time. The lighting guys go, Chris, why'd you choose those lights? Chris, what? Yeah, really, Chris? That's the audio? Or, you know what I mean? From every single department, you know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, great, guys. You know what I mean? No pressure. Let's do an event for the world of events. They're all looking, you know what I mean? But it's a difference of approach.
Because it's like putting on an event for event planners, and every event planner has such a strong opinion of what that should be like.
You see what I'm saying? You're going to have 1,000 opinions, of these event people and all these. And, our conference is different because it literally covers every facet. We have logistics companies, cross-connect companies, private jet companies, hoteliers, travel agents, lighting, audio, video, broadcast, vendors, manufacturers, all of them. And then all the end users that are there. So it's kind of like, you're dealing with every bit of them, but we change it up as well, though. I believe everything is based on vibe, right? So we actually include all the food and a bunch of open bars, and it's at a resort in Palm Springs in January. So you look at it, okay, there's worse places to be than Palm Springs in January. And if you're providing all the food and the drinks, and these people aren't reaching for their purse all the time or their wallet all the time, feeling like they got to shell out, whatever else, all of a sudden their shoulders drop. They realize they're at a resort in Palm Springs. They engage better. You can actually I can almost put the clock of when our attendees will start to all of a sudden relax and ease into it and realize, oh shit, this is all right. You know what I mean? But it takes that minute because we all just came out of whatever gig or the holidays or whatever else. And, we live in a world now where tension starts here. We're trying to figure out a way to bring it down, but now the norm is right here. You're always at the cusp of, oh shit, and that's just the environment we're in now. So it's,
you make a great point when you think about how people show up to events, right? So Like
Yeah.
to get to Palm Springs is not always the
Yeah.
easiest journey. There's
Right.
little to no direct flights there. So people are already showing up, and this is any conference really at a heightened state.
Yeah.
Like they could have had delays.
Yeah.
Maybe they left their baby for the
Yeah.
first time. Maybe they have a sick parent at home that they're anxious to leave
That's right.
about. So that
Whatever it
adrenaline is
is.
pumping.
Yeah.
As soon as they get to
Yeah.
registration, they're coming in hot sometimes because
Yes,
there's a
they
lot
can
of
be
factors.
coming in hot. That's right. And we may, obviously we have nothing to do with the airlines. Luckily though, like Delta just started direct flights from New York to Palm Springs. So it's, starting again. I think a lot of what we're seeing on those fronts is there's a lot of corporations that are holding on to their pandemic playbook because they saw savings and more corporate profits out of it. And it's a bad model to hold on to, but some still are. So we saw a lot of route changes and this and that, what have you. But they are coming in hot, and they're coming in hot for any number of reasons that have nothing to do with us. So to combat that, we now on Thursday, because we buy out the entire resort now, the whole place is us. So anybody on property is only there for this event. You know what I mean? So we now created the first day as resort day. We have a golf tournament. We have a pickleball tournament. You can rent a Harley Davidson and go for a ride through the desert, or you could just enjoy cocktails at the main pool area and just decompress for that whole Thursday with the whole resort yours, and then go into this incredible feast and open bar for opening night reception. So that's how we kind of designed the decompression zone of like, come enjoy a resort day. There's nothing to do on Thursday other than what you want to do. And we're going to feed you and we're going to drink you, and you're at this beautiful resort, and it gives you that time to kind of shed, that little bit. And so, that's been an important part of it, really.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I want to measure Chris's EQ because, man, you're talking about being someone's accountant, their therapist when you were a tour manager, and now, giving people resort day, leisure day at the beginning, which I absolutely love and am stealing. Like, I would love to know, and I don't even know if there's a measurement for EQ, but I would love to know what Chris's EQ is.
But I feel that comes with experience. That comes from like doing things for so long and so many different things like that. And that's one question I have for you, Chris. Like, as you mentioned, the touring managers having to have all this tribal knowledge. Is there a school of thought for those people coming into the industry, the new ones, to learn a lot of those things, right? It's like you can't just know what you don't know.
No, it's a great question, and it's another thing that's been lost a lot. I see the word get thrown around a lot, but I don't see it in action a lot, and that's the mentoring. I had a lot of mentors that taught me a bit about lighting, taught me a bit about this, taught me audio, taught me this, taught me that. And, as far as accounting goes, the first thing I was taught with accounting is, like, it doesn't matter how you word it, 1 + 1 = 2. You know what I mean? But when you look at the music industry is famous for like, okay, you're going to get 20% of the original 40% after 30%. You know what I mean? So, but it's still 1 +.
Wait a second.
Yeah, exactly. But it's 1 + 1 = 2. And again, like I said, we don't learn from winning. So it is experience, but it's also mentoring, which is, that's the other side of LPS. So I started something a few years ago called the Future Forward program. And what it was is so that I could allow students to attend LPS for free. And unlike other conferences who I've seen use students to work the event, well, that to me is like free labor approach, and I'm not cool with it. To me, a student is just a younger peer, because at some point they're either your client, your boss, or the next innovator. So they shouldn't be treated as free labor ever. But I also know that, look, we're an executive level conference. However, when I was asked to run this conference, and I had a litany of things for me to do it, one was rebranding, change this, change that. I wanted to run it by removing everything I hated about conferences. So we don't allow sponsors on panels because it just becomes a timeshare pitch. You know what I mean? And our panels are actually run by our attendees, because 9 times out of 10, those in the audience are smarter than those on the stage. So to take them out of the conversation is terrible. And it also goes back to the psychological side of it, that communal conversations, instead of just looking at somebody with a PowerPoint, we're not that society anymore. But if you hear somebody over here has a comment, and then this person engages, you're actively now in this communal conversation. And at each topic, the people attending that panel, they know the hot topics. It's their specialty, right? It's whatever their discipline is. So we allow them to talk. We do offer what we call focused opportunities where vendors, manufacturers, whatever, can do their spiel for them. But then there's no subterfuge. Like you walk in, you know, you're learning about that company and what they do, or that brand and what they do. But the general panels are just run by the attendees. So basically what we do is we create this environment at this resort, and food and everything else and all the production, everything's put together for the industry to come and use it to discuss what we're doing. And then the Future Forward program that allows me to bring the students for free. It's been hard to sell the sponsorships, but I've now got a lot of corporate sponsors that are getting it. So they're also paying for the hotel rooms for these students. So now not only are we letting them in for free, I've got a sponsor saying I'll cover 10 students' hotel rooms. You know, so now all the students have to do is get to us, kind of thing. But that goes back to the same reason why we're the cheapest of conferences. You know, our registration is only $700. And again, it includes breakfast and lunch every day. You get the opening night, it's open bars, it's a big wine dinner, awards dinner included. So the registration just covers the food. We keep our hotel rooms at less than $300 a night at a resort in Palm Springs. We're able to negotiate that because we're taking the whole place. But we're not looking at this as this massive profit revenue stream. Look, if it breaks even, we're stoked. It's just healthy for the environment, and it's great business development for everybody involved, including myself. But it's got to be that right vibe. I mean, if I walk into a room and I see a PowerPoint set up, chances are I'm walking out pretty fast.
So I was going to ask,
it
though,
just
at
means
this
the person-
wonderful conference of yours, I want to hear a story that probably did not go as according to plan.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. You can, none of them ever go according to plan. I mean, okay, so I did a site visit to one property where we had this area and we were going to set up some vehicles, and they were big sponsors, you know what I mean? Like large level sponsors that were going to, you know, do some stuff there. And then we show up and they go, oh, yeah, we know we told you can't do that, but you can't do that. And they're like, whoa. So now you're risking losing, you know, a lot of money in sponsors when you said we could, and now we can't, and had to create an entire different area in 24 hours to now accommodate. Go back to the sponsor, tell them that what we sold them is not even close to what's going to happen. It's a whole different ball game. And then go to the property and say, look, if they go for this, you're lucky. If they don't, we're coming back at you. Because you caused this. You've admitted now that you told us we could, and now you're saying you can't.
Well,
and then they're
sound like the Fire
headlights.
Festival.
Yeah,
Not quite there. Yeah, we're a little better than that. We're a little better than that. But, you know, you get, especially with the bigger properties, you might get somebody that they think they know events, and we're a little different entity. Think about it. We're going into properties that, you know, they have their events team and whatever else. Well, this is the whole events world. Like we know what we're like. We don't use Encore. We don't need Encore. Encore gets hooked up from us, and that's it. We build the rest. Where, you know, you're not bringing Encore into this. Matter of fact,
Everybody
the early side
brings
of
a piece of the trust. It's like,
Encore,
it's in my suitcase. We're gonna put it together.
Right. Well, you know, the start of Encore kind of started at this conference back when it was called TourLink. You know what I mean? So it's, you know, the conference has been around 27 years or more even.
Wow.
We rebranded a live production summit a few years ago because, again, those silos that used to exist between touring, corporate, municipal, they don't exist anymore. So now it's just live production because that's what we all do, and it covers all facets for everybody. But, you know, some of these things we run into, like the award show, I never want to necessarily be the face and always up there. Normally I've run this award show, and one of the things I hate about award shows is when they're just 3 hours long, you know, and you do the in memoriam and you piss somebody off because you missed somebody or somebody wasn't recognized. So I just do a moment for whoever you want to think about, whatever you want to think about, to evade that, you know what I mean? And we actually almost make it a competition now about how quick can we get through these awards? You know what I mean? There's no speeches. There's no whatever. You come up, get your award, take a picture, and you're gone. So this last year, we had a bunch of students there. We had about 75 students from USC, Belmont, UCLA, and everything else. And I just went up, and we've got a great student liaison, Alex Prince. He's a tour manager. Great kid. I shouldn't even call him a kid anymore. But anyways, I said, you know what? How about the students run the award show? How about the younger generation pass up the awards to the next because they're the next generation? These kids had never done an award show, never been on a stage, and they're in front of everybody that they want a job from. And for all that it was not in any way uniformed or anything else, it was brilliant. And it goes to prove that sometimes throwing the script away is the smartest thing you can do. And that's where I say, if I walk into a PowerPoint, then what I know is that you've stood in front of a mirror and you've said this spiel, whatever you're about to do, over and over and over again. And you think there's life in your speech. There's no life. You're going through the motions. And for me, at least, that does zero to keep me engaged. Absolutely. Because you end up sounding monotone to me, like, yep, you clearly researched that part. Yep, you clearly had a problem with that part. You can tell, if you've done it enough, well, they tooled that, they fixed that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit through it. I'm just not that guy. Where if it's a free-flowing communal conversation, I'm all in. Which is why I liked your format of the last one I was on. It's like, okay, everybody's engaged. This is great. Because again, when you take everybody out of the conversation, what are you doing? You're just got a few talking heads with their experiences. Well, that doesn't do much for me.
I love that. Well, guess what, Chris? We're going to IMAX and we're bringing this format as a live in-person story sharing.
Nice.
And not only that's going to be me and again hosting it, but we're going to take people from the audience and be like, now you come into the hot seat and you're going to come and share some of your stories. So I'm excited about that opportunity because you're right. Like we've done enough of those, very rigid formats where somebody's just talking to you and you're like there because you sign up for something else and now you're getting this or whatever for the reason why you wanted to go. And we want more. I think it's important to have a mix. I think it's important to have a blend of all of those experiences, but having the opportunity to also be the expert in the room, even though you're not on the, on the whatever header as the speaker.
Full of experts. You're also in a room full of experts.
Our own ways.
I just got back from LA where her name is Sarah Shuey and she owns a company called Happily out of LA. And she did this event called Happily Fest. And I had never heard of it. I wasn't familiar with Sarah. She was referred to me by Tamlin Wright, a brilliant lighting designer. And she got a hold of me and she asked, would you please be my guest and come to this event and speak at it? When I got there, everybody goes, well, have you prepared something? And I went, no. Was I supposed to prepare? I don't, not preparing anything.
So Anca sending the Google sheet to Chris was worthless.
Chris, like, where am I supposed to go? Just tell me where.
Yeah, I just look, and that's kind of it. You could say I'm as bad as an artist in some senses. Just tell what time.
You're every meeting planner's worst nightmare. Like showing up here, just like, what do you need me?
Yeah, to me, okay, so we're going to talk about events. Okay, let's talk. I don't need to prepare to talk about events. I don't need to prepare what my feelings or thoughts are on what have you. I good, bad, or indifferent, you're getting me. That's it. You know what I mean? And I didn't write anything, but it was a very unique event. I thought it was very well done and I was happy to be a part of it. But again, it was that interesting thing of I had multiple people. Chris, what have you prepared for us? I didn't prepare anything for you. Well, what are you going to talk about? I said, whatever everybody wants to talk about. Because again, to me, the healthiest is the communal with everybody, not just me talking at you. I want to learn about you.
Okay, so walk us through that process. Like as a speaker, you show up on stage, you're like, okay, I take questions. And you're like, okay, but what?
Sure. I mean, you can give me, it's kind of like you don't want to say somebody's a moderator. You want to say they're a conversation curator. And they're there because they're capable in the format of live speaking to either drive a conversation or recognize a lull and pick it and move it and transfer it. That's more that position rather than just talking at you with some, diatribe or whatever. But I mean, sure, if somebody says, Chris, we'd like you to come out and start with your thoughts on this. Well, I'll give you my thoughts on it, but they're not going to be prepared. They're going to be what my thoughts are on it on the moment that I comment about it. Because again, they
might change from day to day.
Well, yeah, but if you're truly human, it's constant evolvement, right? So your thoughts are constantly evolving and changing how you think about something. Because if you just have your idea about something and lock it in and leave it like that, well, there's not a lot of growth in that, in my opinion. and you never know when you're going to hear that one statement from somebody and you go, oh shit, I've been approaching this all wrong. That's brilliant. And that's what you seek, right?
Mhm.
It's like I was interviewed and asked what it was about live shows that I really loved. And it took a lot of years for me to realize this, because here's the deal with whatever band I'm with, I've heard the show, I've heard the song. Some of those bands I could go my whole life without hearing that hit song again, because I had to hear it every single night. But what I did realize is that minute I get on the radio and I say drop house lights, meaning everything's ready to go, we're walking up to the stage, we're ready to go. It's an energy that you could feel in the crowd, that gasp when the crowd realizes, oh shit. And all of a sudden they're not looking at their phones, they're not yelling at each other. Everybody turns towards the stage with that anticipation. And there's an audible side of it that everybody goes, oh, you know what I mean? And here we go. That little brief time, it's like that elusive golf shot. That's why I did it. You can't recreate that energy at any other time the right thing. Once the show starts, I walk away because I've seen the show. But that, I will always go find a spot to experience that, because it's the one time that you could have 20, 30, 50,000 people all collectively be excited or anxious about the same thing in a positive light. And that's
Well, I'm headed to a concert next week, and I just got chills, like waiting for the
Love it.
moment.
What are you gonna see? What are you gonna
Who
see?
is it?
I am taking my dad to go see Sheryl Crow and Pink next week.
Great show. Cheryl's great.
Yeah, I've seen
Great
seen both of them before. Pink's one of our favorite artists that we share, and
Pink's amazing. She is absolutely amazing. And Cheryl is just as organic as they come. She just really, she's a sweetheart of a person. They're all great. It's, and it's funny, the shows are different. Like I was the production manager for the Dallas Rodeo for a couple of years, which is in Dallas, Texas, and it's massive with these giant artists, and it's such an odd environment for the artists and for us, because let's be clear, the bull riders and those are part of the rodeo, they don't want us there. They don't give a shit about them. This is how they make their living.
They just want to ride.
There's $1 million at stake. They don't give a damn about the music or whatever else. You know what I mean? And I prefer animals over people. So I've always got this kind of weird environment about pyrotechnics and everything around animals, because to me, I just think it's kind of like, wow, that's a little fucked up. You know what I mean? Because an animal's first instinct when it sees fire is panic. Get the hell out. Right. You know what I mean? So I have to reconcile in the privacy of my own skull how to, deal with those things. But it goes back to just how different all the environments are, right? It's like when you have a very corporate show and you've got that one guy that shows up in a polka dot tux, right? And he just wants to be the life of that corporate event and just thinks they've got their shtick all worked out. And you just sit there and shake your head going, I wish I could just walk over and take that badge and escort him out and say, please have a nice day, and I hope the best of you. And I'm not against
it's
creativity.
It's funny because I have that guy come to mind. I know exactly what shows he goes to and what he's wearing.
And I'm all for the creativity and I'm all for vibe, like I said, but some people do it as such a polished shtick, more so than it just being them naturally. I'm all for the people that are just that flamboyant naturally and it's off the cuff. Love it. I will celebrate it. But when it's your marketing shtick and you've got it all just glossed up and you're just like a higher level used car salesman kind of vibe, no offense to car salesmen, but you know what I'm saying? It's just kind of like, you know what I mean? I'm not sure. Like this might be the factory authorized resale of the car. So, you know what I mean?
Authentic is the name of the game for Chris. That's for sure.
Always. It's vibe and authentic. Look, I believe if more people call bullshit when they saw bullshit, there'd be less bullshit.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, look, we could sit and talk and, event about it all day. We are coming close to the end here, but I do want so we talked a lot about mentoring as you gain
Sure.
more experience, you definitely are able to make, hard decisions quicker. The oh shit window gets a little bit smaller the more experience that you have, the
Yeah.
importance of that, being authentic. We've talked about a lot of
You
things.
need less oh shit time as you get more experience.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
So one piece of advice, so someone maybe going into an event this week or coming into the industry, what's like one piece of advice you would have for our event professional audience?
Yeah.
Don't be a one-trick pony. And by that, I mean that if you tell me this is the greatest country in the world, you just told me you've never been anywhere else. If you tell me I can only do audio on a Midas console, then that tells me you only know a Midas console. And that makes you a one-trick pony. So you may be really great at just that one discipline and nothing else. But if I find somebody that's good at that discipline and has strong fundamentals of everything going on around them, I'm going to hire that person. Because to be a team player and know when to zig and know when to zag is to understand the total production, not just your hyper-focused portion of it. It's the same thing that it used to be that in touring, if you finished your project, you would go to the other department heads and say, hey, I'm done. Can I help you guys with anything to help the whole team get done? Where now it's you get done and they just go to the bus and off by themselves and leave everybody else, and you often hear, well, that's not my job. You're going to pay me more? I'm not doing that. And that vibe, in my opinion, it's detrimental to the vibe of everything. It's unsafe because if you don't know the terminology of what's going around you, at least. So I advise everybody, when you have the time, learn at least the terminology and fundamentals of what's around you, because you're increasing your value to somebody like a production manager, a technical director, a tour manager, because it's like, you know what? He is really good at what he does, but he also can help with this, or at least understands, boy, you're worth more money to me.
Yeah.
And you're just worth more to the production than somebody goes, nope, I only do this and I'm not doing anything else. And you're paying me this to do this. It's like, wow, okay. And not saying you're going to be called on to do something else, but just to know that you're there and your mind, it tells me a lot about your mind when you want to learn the fundamentals about you as well.
So
I mean, be great at what you do to be best at what you can be. Yeah, but be a team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that would be mine.
That you are,
don't be a one-trick pony.
Yeah, be the expert that you
like
are.
I have friends of mine that I've had friends of mine, like I'll bring up a gentleman named Royal Jensen. He's currently out with one of my clients, Limp Bizkit. Him and I, through the years, I've been his tour manager. He's been my tour manager. I've been his front of house engineer. He's been my production manager. You know what I mean? And through the years, we've done this, that, but we've also had clients to where if he couldn't make it, he'd call me, say, Chris, can you fill in for me? And they knew me and knew that our styles had turned. So they're, oh, it's Chris. Okay. Or it's Royal. Okay. Like I built the Kids Bop tour, right? I built the live show for Kids Bop. And Royal's known for these Hawaiian shirts. And I told him, no, this is a very corporate event. You have to wear the Kids Bop brand and everything else. Now, he didn't know that I went and bought all the kids and all their parents Hawaiian shirts, right? So Royal shows up thinking for the first time he's got to dress corporate. And then there's all the kids in his Hawaiian shirt. And you can have fun with it. But it's about having the right people that can change those, when they need to change and need to adapt. Like a true tour manager or production manager, again, it comes back to those fundamentals. What if one of your people's sick all of a sudden? Back in the day, we used to say, you know what? You're better to us healthy. You stay on the bus and get better, or stay at the hotel and get better. And we could absorb that position and still get the production done and still care about our coworker getting better. That's not so much the case anymore. There's not a lot of people to absorb the other positions anymore.
Yeah.
It's great advice. Great advice.
Absolutely. Well, that was fantastic, Chris. Thank you so much for sharing all of those tidbits and all the nuggets of wisdom. And yeah, I'm right there with Megan. Like, where is the school for EQ that we can send some of our team members?
You know what? Send them to Live Production Summit, because they're going to find a mentor, or at least other people at LPS, because look, certain events that have certain vibes draw people of the same vibes, right? So you can send them there. If you have anybody that wants, I'm happy to provide a discount, code for those that want to attend it for the first time and come see it. But it is heavy about mentoring. It's heavy about community involvement. It's heavy about the communal approach to production. You know what I mean? And to get back to, it doesn't matter what department you're on, we're all trying to create a production. And in my opinion, that goes so much smoother if everybody helped in that goal.
Well,
So
it sounds
Chris,
like you
where
need
they
Anca and I to come speak at LPS. So
I
where
I
we
know
can
he's
find
been
you.
I
You
know
know,
he's
here,
been trying to get me, and every time I have some
I've
kind of a
invited
schedule
I've
conflict.
invited Anca before, but here's we have companies like Roby did their podcast from LPS. We have people that actually
Yeah.
come and they bring the attendees over and interview them while they're there. So like Roby, the lighting company, they did a podcast there and set up a little thing, and I'm fine with it. I don't care as long as the attendees have the release and whatever else, and it's but that type of stuff happens all the time because again, even things like this right here, it's communal conversation, right? It's healthy.
Yeah.
Healthy.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, what I was going to ask you, when is the date for the 2025 and where can people go and learn more about it or connect with you? Any of those tidbits of information that you
I'm
can share?
really easy to find on almost every social platform. I'm pretty easy. LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. And if people aren't using LinkedIn for business, they really need to start. It is still pretty focused and great for business, where Facebook is, friendly, what have you, Instagram friendly, but LinkedIn's still pretty pro. I'm easy to find everywhere. Other than that, it's liveproductionsummit.com. It's January 9th through the 11th. It's January every year in Palm Springs. And it's every format you can imagine rolled into one conference.
So it's a little bit of everything for everyone.
The panel.
Love it.
Yeah, so we have women in broadcast run by Chantel that brought women from Riot, ABC, ESPN, and it's all women in broadcast. We've got Candace Newman, the founder of Live Out Live and part of Grammy University, that runs our diversity program. We have companies, some of the focused opportunities are design companies like Light Switch. We've got Sennheiser doing a focused opportunity. We've got Video West doing a focused opportunity. Then you have all the travel and hospitality panels. Our emerging tech panel last year was Miguel from Holoplot that built the sound system for the Sphere, as well as Jeremy Lior from Creative London, who's an AI expert. They're the ones that actually created that new AI Guns N' Roses video where it goes from human to AI seamlessly within the video, in and out of it. Yeah, these guys are just crazy geniuses. Our lighting and design panel was run by Cosmo Wilson and Rob Koenig from Metallica and all that, and Tamlin, who's done Coldplay, and everybody else. So it's tons of different panels of all the normal suspect stuff. We have logistics panel that's just for logistics and trucking, where we even had one sponsor that taught how to do a truck pack correctly and safely, because again, it's a fundamental to understand. You know what I mean?
Useful for everyone that moves anywhere or
Everyone.
Yeah, we have rigging classes and rigging safety. We have a safety and security panel that covers crowd crush and how to do security properly and safety properly and what to look at and what's changing in that scope. So everything's on the forefront of what did we learn in 24 is all going to be talked about in January 25. What do we need to change? What worked for us? What are we augmenting? That's what the conversation is. But they do cover every single aspect of events. And luckily we're attended again, but it's manufacturers, it's vendors, it's end users of all these. So, the vendors get to talk to the manufacturers, the end users talk to both, saying this product needs to do this, or we need a product to do that. So it's a great educational time, but it's done with a lot of great food and drink at a resort.
You can't beat that. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, we don't do it at like it's no convention center. You're surrounded by palm trees and swimming pools and, granted, built out ballrooms, but it's much nicer to do it in a resort environment.
I agree.
I think my final thought as we're wrapping up here is the strongest takeaway from Chris for me today was not being a one-trick pony and being curious. There's so much we can do across our lives to connect the dots that impact events, from EQ and psychology and how concerts are run, that event conferences or corporate events can learn from each other. As Chris mentioned, we're not in silos anymore. It's not association events or corporate events or live events. Like it's just
they're all the same.
Now.
Your CEO
they're
is
all
the
same. Exactly. And so I think there's a lot that we can all learn and share from each other. And Chris certainly highlighted that today.
I love it.
Yeah, if you look at how CEOs walk out
really
now, yeah, it's all the same. It's all events.
It's all.
Well, Chris,
I appreciate you having me. I enjoyed it.
We had a great time.
We did. Well, that pretty much brings us to our wrap up for this episode of Event About It. And I just want to extend a heartfelt thanks to everyone that joined us, all these other episodes, those who have submitted their incredible stories. We still have quite a few to cover before our live episode at IMAX. We appreciate your expertise and insights that have been shared. We still want to hear from you because maybe we might discuss one of those stories come IMAX. We don't know. We haven't decided yet, but please keep submitting those stories, and who knows what might happen. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, do us a favor and subscribe YouTube and Spotify. I know that some of you have, but if you have not, please do that. We're also active on LinkedIn, Instagram, all those places. And also big thank you to Trifan Events, also Kitcaster for their help in bringing quality guest to our show. And yes, mark your calendars. It's going to be October 9th, 2 p.m. at IMAX in the Curious Minds Inspiration Hub. And we're going to call this Whoops, Stories from the Front Lines. It's going to be a great opportunity to dive into some unexpected and surprising, unforgettable moments, as Chris has shared today with us and some of our past guests have in the past. And with that, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Megan, for being here. All of you have a wonderful rest of whatever day today is. I'm still trying to find out because it's been a crazy day. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to review it, rate it, and share it with other event professionals that could benefit from it. Connect with us on social at Events Demystified Podcast. We would love to hear from you and what you're up to. If you'd like to learn more about Trifan Event services and find out if we're a good fit in supporting your event, can we help your event be successful with a 20-minute free consultation? Link in the episode's notes. Thanks for tuning in.